I just wanted to welcome everybody to this. It's sort of a combination drop-in support group meeting and an inaugural fall meeting for all of our other support groups. So it's kind of organized by the support group leaders. I'm just handling the technical end here. I just want everybody to understand that we're recording this meeting so that we can put a recording of it on our website, so people who couldn't make it tonight you can at least hear what Ed has to say and hear the questions that we ask. But of course, they'll be out of luck as far as asking any other questions. So as a result, if you're concerned about confidentiality, I mean, you can just use your first name. You don't have to give us your name at all. Or, as I usually say, I mean, you can use a pseudonym. You can call yourself Yogi Bear or whatever you want. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Ed Speers, our guest speaker tonight. Many of you know that there were supposed to be two guest speakers tonight. The other one was Mark Pettigrew, and Mark and Ed were both on the transplant waiting list. And Mark got the call this week and has had his surgery and apparently is doing very well, breathing with his new lungs. So.
Oh, really?
Oh, good.
And he sent me pictures today.
Oh
my God. Of his surgery site and all the tubes and he's walking. So he's walking. Yep. They got him up and he's off. He's breathing on his own. He's off his oxygen tubes and he keeps his daughter's going towards his nose to readjust his oxygen tube, and of course nothing's there.
Not there. I believe it.
Oh, yeah, so he's doing very well.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I just wanted to also add one other thing, and for confidentiality, if you don't want to give your name, if you can at least give where you live. This just gives the rest of the listeners, when they listen through the website, how far across Canada, we're touching base with our meetings and support groups and guest speakers. So welcome, Ed, and thank you so much. And Barb, too. Barb, are you going to give us a little overview of a caregiver's perspective?
Well, I'll try.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. Okay, Ed.
Question. I just want to ask, what do you press so that your background noise doesn't come in?
That's a really good question.
No clue.
I don't know either. You can mute it. Is it 6, Jim?
Tell you what, I will figure that out while Ed talks, and then I'll let everybody know. We haven't done one of these meetings for so long. When I went to log in to do the recording, everything had changed.
Oh.
Here we go. Self-mute. *6*.
Thank you.
How do you turn it off?
Same thing. Just do it again. *6*.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well,
take it away, Ed.
All right. My name is Ed Speers. I live in Elmira, Ontario, which is not very far from Kitchener-Waterloo, about an hour and a half from Toronto. And I'll talk about being listed for the lung transplant. I have to preface my remarks by saying I'm listed in Toronto. I don't know about all the requirements and process in different provinces, but I know in Toronto, they cover all of the East Coast provinces, Northwest Territories, Ontario. I know the fellow there from Manitoba. I believe that there's a program in Vancouver and in Alberta, I think Calgary. And in Quebec there is, in Montreal, I believe. So all I can say is what my experience has been in Toronto. I expect that the others are similar, but I'm not sure. What I'm going to try and do is tell you about getting listed, preparing for the transplant, and what it means to be on the list. What happens when the call comes, and we'll talk a little about financial issues. So, how to get on the list. You need to be referred by your specialist or doctor to the transplant program. They send a file, send notes to the transplant program, and then the transplant people get in touch with you to arrange a visit. It was down a couple of times for visits before I was transplanted, before I was listed, sorry. At the initial visit, you do some like TFTs, a 6-minute walk, and then you talk to one of the doctors there, respirologists, that kind of go over general outline of the program and expectations and some of the things. And then they decide whether they're going to carry or offer to do further assessment. And which you have a choice every step along the way whether you want to proceed or not. But if you go to a full assessment, it means, well, for us it was 5 days in Toronto at the hospital, and you're scheduled for different tests and interviews each day. I won't bore you with all the list of all the things that you go through, all the tests that happen. You also talk to the transplant coordinator, social worker with the program, dietitian, and anesthetist. And when your assessment is scheduled, they send you a package of information, including a book that gives you your schedule for the week, and the book gives you details on each test and each interview, where they take place, and directions on how to get there, so that you know, because it's an unfamiliar hospital can be kind of confusing to get around. I understand for some people their assessment took 4 days. Mine took 4.5, I guess. Last test was scheduled for the Friday morning. The purpose of the assessment is kind of twofold. First, they want to assess how your lungs are and whether you're at the point that you should be listed for a transplant, or whether it's wiser for you to wait, because there are risks associated with the transplant. And the other part of the testing is to determine whether the rest of you is up to surviving the surgery. A lot of it is about heart testing to make sure that everything is as it should be. Then after the week of assessment, you go home and wait. And eventually you hear, and that can take, everybody is different. And that's one thing I have to keep stressing about this whole thing. Everyone is different. Situations are different. The program is in a different state or different status, or there's all kinds of variables that happen. So I can only relate my experience and maybe some of those I've spoken to. We waited a number of weeks before hearing. One of the things they tell you is if they decide to list you and you agree to go on the list, the last test that's required is an angiogram, heart catheterization, which is really the only invasive test that's involved. And after you do that, then you wait, and it's the team at the transplant center assesses everything to determine if you're ready for a transplant, if you're deteriorated to that point, and if the rest of you is up for a transplant. In my case, initial visit to the hospital was in May. and my assessment took place the middle of July. The heart catheterization took place in September, and I was assigned the papers to go on the list in the middle of November. So that gives you kind of an idea of time frame, and I don't think mine was too unusual. Some are longer, some are shorter. If there's any questions, jump in and ask.
This is Rob from Fort McMurray. I've got one question regarding prolactin. What is the normal time frame from the time that your doctor would say that they're going to try and get prolactin for you as to when you actually start to get treatments? Does anybody have any idea?
It's variable too. I think it depends on how it's going to get paid for.
Yeah, I think, Rob, you're in Alberta. It looks like it's been taking from the time the doctor actually submits the application, right? Because, I mean, we don't know when, but it's taking about 6 to 8 weeks, which is a little quicker than it used to happen in Ontario, but unfortunately it doesn't happen in Ontario at all anymore. So that's the people that I've talked to, at least, that have got approved in Alberta. And as far as we know, everybody who's applied has been approved in Alberta since they made this decision last March. It's taken them, again, between 6 and 8 weeks. Part of the reason for the difference is because the doctors who submit the application, may have left things out, and so the government has to get back to them, and so sometimes there's a little bit back and forth, and then some of the physicians have done it before, and so they know what the government's looking for, and so it goes a little more quickly.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Sorry.
Go ahead, Ed.
A couple of things now. As part of the assessment program process, when we spoke to the social worker, one of their requirements for listing is, let me back up a second. When you're listed, you're required to, at the Toronto program, which I know is different than others, but in the Toronto program, you're required to be in physiotherapy 3 times a week. For the first 4 weeks, that's in Toronto. There's no choice. You have to go to Toronto. In our case, that meant driving from home. And we'll get into some other situations later. And part of the assessment process is you need to supply them with a list of people who are going to get you to Toronto, because you can't drive yourself. They assume that at the point of being listed that you're going to need help. So they want a list and a schedule of people that are going to help you get to Toronto. Also a list of, or a plan for how you're going to get there when you get a call. Then there has to be at least three levels: Plan A, Plan B, Plan C kind of thing. Plan C being, if you had to call a taxi, how long would it take them to get to your house, and how long from there to the hospital? Now, if you live outside of an acceptable travel distance, which is about 2 to 2.5 hours, and that's in reasonable traffic. I mean, to travel to Toronto at rush hour, 2 hours can be, 5 blocks. So when they're talking about a 2 or 2.5 hour travel time, they're talking about, when the traffic is good. If you live outside that, though, you'll need to relocate to Toronto, and so that you can be within enough travel time or enough time to get there. Now, is there any questions about that process?
Do they have any special places that they can send you to that's not quite as expensive to stay?
That's a good question. I think that they have some information about opportunities that you can investigate. Again, that's part of the social worker's job, is to kind of help people relocate and get settled and understand what's what, where to find a grocery store and how to get around. And there are what do they call, Wheel-Trans, which is transports people to hospital appointments and that kind of thing.
So you drove every day from your house to your
3 times a week. We drove 3 times a week.
Yeah.
For that first 4 weeks.
Yes.
Now, after the first 4 weeks, you may be able to do 2 times a week at a more local hospital in a physiotherapy program.
Right.
In our area, in Freeport Hospital in Kitchener, there is
an accredited program.
Yeah, an accredited rehab program, and they have they're associated or have worked with Toronto, so that people can go there to do their physiotherapy.
That's an hour from me, so that's good.
Pardon?
That's good. It's an hour from me, closer than Toronto.
That's right. Yeah. And but you still go once a week to Toronto.
Right.
Every week to get so that they can keep track of how you're doing and so on. No.
Hi. My name is Glenna, and I'm from BC, Aldergrove, BC, actually. Okay. I find it's really fascinating, all the things you're going through. I have had a right lung transplant, and it's through Vancouver General Hospital. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have to go through all this stuff.
Really?
I didn't have to be in physio for that. Maybe it's because I was in really bad shape, but I don't remember having to go through the physio and all that kind of stuff that you were talking about.
Well, I know everyone does in Toronto, no matter what condition you're in.
I know, and my brother is in Alberta, and he also says they have to go through these things. So I don't understand how.
I know, speaking to people from the States, they've never heard of such a thing.
I know, it's quite amazing that I'm listening, and I'm here because I'm hoping to be on the list for another transplant on my other lung. So that's why I'm I'm getting back into it again after 5 years. But
so it is different in BC.
It is totally different. Like we have we don't spend 4 days doing all these tests. I don't remember, staying in the hospital and doing that.
How long ago did you have your surgery, Glenna?
It's been almost 5 years.
Yeah.
In November, and it's
it may be different now.
Well, actually, it could be. It really could be, but it just seems like it's just such a hard thing to have to go through when you're in real pain. I guess I'm just kind of going, oh, it's a lot of stuff to do.
It is.
It's a long process, and it is.
It is. It's a long process, and
mm-hmm.
it is. It's a lot to go through.
I did wait a year for my transplant. Mm-hmm. I was on the list, and I did wait a year. But it was instead of having to go all the way into Vancouver, they used my doctor. Like I went into my family doctor all the time. Uh-huh. So it was, that's what I can't instead of having to go into Toronto all the time, could not use your family doctor instead of?
Well, I still see my doctors.
Yeah. Okay.
But in Toronto, when you're on the Toronto list, you have to go to Toronto, and you see the doctors in Toronto regularly.
Yeah. Okay. Like once a week, or?
No.
Like right now, okay, so you're not...
We're, at this point, when we started out, it was once every 2 months, either a respirologist or the nurse practitioner. But you're seeing the physiotherapist every week, and if they see a problem, then they bring in the nurse practitioner usually to look and talk to you. They know if you've got an infection going or something like that.
Okay, now, the one thing you were mentioning is that, like, I have had a girlfriend who lives in Kamloops, quite a long ways away, and the government flew her. When she got her call, they flew her from Kamloops to Vancouver. Okay. Do they not do that in Toronto?
No.
They don't?
No.
So you actually have to move.
Yes. There are, I can't even tell you, right now there's around 75 people on the list in Toronto.
And they have to move to Toronto to be there.
Well, if you're farther away than 2.5 hours or so.
Yeah,
okay. There's a number of people there from Newfoundland, PEI, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. And they've had to move to Toronto, and they stay there for the duration. And for another 3 months after, kind of as a minimum. It may be longer depending on your condition. Now, there is some financial assistance from the province. In Ontario, there's, I believe, and I could be mistaken, but I believe it's $750 a month. You have to relocate for medical reasons. Other provinces have their own programs.
Yeah, we have programs too where some of the motels in the area, they charge for cheaper if you're going to the hospital, right?
Right.
But that to me is really, that's different. Like, I don't understand why it's so different from province to province. Well, I guess I should understand, but I don't.
I can interject. That's one of the reasons that Toronto is one of the top 3 in the world.
Well, the Toronto program.
Ron from Hawkstone between Ridley and Barrie. What hospital are you connected with that does this?
It's Toronto General.
Toronto General.
Yeah, right downtown.
And that's the only one that's handling this?
That's the only one in the province that does lung transplants.
Okay, thank you.
Am I being heard?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if I could talk or not. I'm Val. Ed, you know me.
How are you, Val?
Hi, Val.
I'm great. How are you? Well,
I'm okay.
Yeah. I just wanted to make my presence be known here, just because my brother just had a transplant 2 nights ago. And I might be able to answer a few questions. I'm sure Ed is far more knowledgeable, but I've gone through a little bit of the process with Mark, so yeah, I just wasn't sure if I opened my mouth, if I was actually online or whatever.
Here you are.
I am.
Boy, you must be thrilled, Val.
Well, Mark is doing exceptionally well.
I received his pictures today.
Did you?
Yes.
Where?
His daughter has me on the list.
Okay, you're Mimi, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So it's amazing, absolutely amazing.
It really is. It's just mind-blowing.
Well,
yeah.
Ed, not to take away from your talk, but are you going to talk a little bit about the call? Is that later down in your speech?
Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't want to forget because I think that's an interesting segue as well.
Yeah, I was just there. I was going to talk a little bit about after you're listed, what happens.
Okay.
As I say, physio, you receive a pager. Now, in this program, Bell Canada provides it without cost. Unless you go and wreck it, and then you have to pay for a new one. I did find out the hard way on that one.
Oh, no.
Don't drop it in the sink, okay?
Or toilet.
Or the toilet. They don't work after that. And the other things are, there's the physio, as I say, and there's appointments. that you go to see the practitioner or the respirologist. Periodically, they'd retest, blood tests, and X-rays, and CAT scans, and cardiogram, and so on as time goes by. I've been listed now for a little over 10 months. The general idea is to keep you as healthy as possible. So good nutrition, of course. They want you to be within a specific BMI range, your body mass index. Not too skinny, not too heavy. They want you to be in decent shape, and they may have a nutritionist work with you on that. But other than that, it's just try to stay as healthy as you can. When the call comes, I've had one call a week ago last Sunday. Unfortunately, the lungs were no good, which is part of the deal. When they show these things on TV, it's all very dramatic, and everybody rushes off with their head half on. That really is not the way it is. Part of the assessment process when you talk with the social worker is, they tell you plan, down and discuss what needs to happen, and where things are going to go, and who gets called, and all these things. Pack a bag for your support person, and as part of the process, you need to have one person that is your support person, who is also your contact person for them when you're not available for contact. Who do they get a hold of? And so you put some planning into that, and fortunately, Barb is very good at those things, better than I am. And we have a good solid plan, and now we've had a dry run, and everything worked very well.
Not like having a baby, huh, Ed?
Well, it's very similar to having a baby, actually. And false calls you get with false labor and stuff, yeah?
Yeah, we have a suitcase packed, or a bag, to go to the hospital, like you do when you're having a baby, and all those things. When you go to the hospital, you're admitted through either admitting or emergency, depending on the time of day. And you have a chest X-ray. Then you go up to the transplant unit, and I was put in a room, and sometimes you're in, I guess, like a lounge chair, easy chair kind of thing. But they go through just like a regular admission process. If you've been in a hospital recently, they do the paperwork, and they have to take some swab samples, and they draw blood for tests. A whole lot of blood. Probably 10 or 12 vials worth of stuff. Start an IV. Respirologist came and talked to me about some of the things to expect and some of what they're going to do after, like getting you up to walk as soon as they can. So that that's part of the recovery process. They also give you an initial dose of anti-rejection medication. So,
So did you go through all that already with your first dry run?
Yep. Went through all that.
What would be the effect of the anti-rejection medication, if any, because it lowers your immune system? Would that put you at any greater risk for infection having received that?
Well, I suppose.
Okay, you didn't have any after effects, though?
Well, it's just that you don't feel real well for a day. I didn't feel real well for a couple of days.
Okay.
And attributed it to that. Now, they do give you a whopping dose, so it's a consideration. You don't want to go and play around a bunch of school kids, maybe,
right,
for a day or two. Just use common sense and and know that your immune system is maybe more compromised than it usually is with alpha-1. It is anyway.
Right.
Or so. When you actually go to the OR, you're not allowed to have anything on but what you came into the world with. No rings, no glasses, no contacts, no nothing.
No dentures.
No clothes.
And
No shame.
Not even a hospital gown?
No.
okay, no, gown is the only thing you have.
Okay.
And that's for a very short time.
Yeah. One of the guys that had been through it recently said, like, hang up your dignity at the door.
It's gone.
Literally.
Now, this is really
That
getting
is
to
like
sound
having
like
a
a baby
baby.
delivery.
Yeah.
Ed, I have a question, and I don't know if you have the answer, and I hope it's relevant, but one of the things Mark was told is that he was only on the list for a week, which is just incredible, but it had to do, well, I mean, part of it anyway, because there's no predicting, but they said because his blood type was the universal recipient.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm wondering, and also he needed large lungs. His chest cavity is large, and they said those two things went in his favor.
Yep.
So I'm wondering how many people, universal recipient, I believe, is O positive, and that's what I am as well. I don't want to ask personal questions, but is your blood type anything unusual or?
No. Mine is quite usual.
Okay.
About half of the people on the list are the same blood type as I am.
Okay.
Which is is good and bad.
Yes.
In order to, when they're assessing who gets the out of a set of lungs that have become available, they're looking at, of course, blood type and size.
Right.
The first two things. They also look at antibodies, which that can have an impact on it. And then they match that to the available listed people. And then if there's more than one match, it's the person who is the sickest, basically, who is in the most dire need. So having something that is, an unusual blood type or an unusual size can go either for you or against you.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
If there's a set of lungs that become available, you may be the only one that matches.
Right.
So,
which I'm guessing, perhaps in Mark's case, was what happened. I don't know. I have no clue.
In the last 10 months, you meet a lot of people. A lot of people that are listed.
Right.
And quite often, men that are taller with bigger lungs receive their lungs faster than the average.
Why is that?
I have no idea. Someone suggested taller people are poorer drivers.
Yes.
I'm not sure if there's any truth in that or not.
Okay. It just, I've been trying to figure this out. Why would the fact that Mark needed larger lungs be significant? And I have no answer for it. I thought you might. So, tall people are bad drivers.
It's donor driven. The whole process is driven by the donors that are available, and that's what it is. Because last time they updated the stats on the Trillium Gift of Life website, there were 26 people with an O blood type.
Okay.
There were 37 with an A, 2 with AB, and 11 with a B blood type.
Okay.
So, and then they break it down further into males and females, as well. more females than males on the list. So, you know, it's
more females than males on the list.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. All this stuff is online out of the Triumph.
Okay, I've never looked at it.
Barb, would you have that website? Can you give that to us?
Yeah, it's Trillium. Just Google Trillium Gift of Life. It's www.giftoflife.on.ca.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
When you were, Ed, can I bump in here? My name is Glenna again.
Hi, Glenna.
When you were talking about the different diseases or whatever for the lungs, I know that I have what they call the CMV virus.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure anybody really knows about it.
Yeah.
Most people, like the doctor explained to me that most people have this virus in their body.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have it in my body.
But it came in the lungs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
But the thing is so then they had to, I still am having a problem with it. I have to take different drugs for it because it has erupted a few times. It is, it's almost like when you go, you go kind of brown in the face or red and yellow in the face. That kind of stuff, like hepatitis. It's almost like a hepatitis, but a lot of people, most people, have this CMV virus in them.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're also looking for lungs, they're also trying to make sure that they don't give you one with that virus if you don't have it.
Well, we asked about that. See, my brother had a transplant in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And went through that as well.
Yeah.
And we asked the question, and they said in Toronto they don't test for that.
They don't test for that.
No. They deal with it after.
Yeah.
And
well, see, actually, the doctor
dealing with it. So
the doctor they did tell me about that. They told me that this virus is in me and they're trying to kill it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, if they hadn't given me the transplant, it would have been dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I was that bad that I needed it at that point. But
yep. And
it just kind of makes me weird that they don't test for that.
Yeah, but it's kind of, there is, they can only do so much. And
that's true. That's true.
Yeah, the real issue is that there's a real of lung for transplant, and
oh yes.
And they even debate back and forth about even giving a donor who was a smoker is better than no donor at all.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
We're looking at a thing online the other day, and the doctor, the head of the Department of lung transplant at Toronto said, of all the donors' lungs, 15% of them are suitable for transplant.
Oh.
So.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's, for one reason or another,
mm-hmm.
There's a very low percentage there, and so they're not going to turn down lungs that are good for if at all possible.
Yeah, that's.
And right now, if I had a choice between lungs and having to deal with CMV, I'd take the CMV.
I would take the CMV any day.
Yeah.
Because there is a way of getting rid of it.
Yeah.
Whereas the lungs, they're there for life.
Yep.
I have never heard of
CMV. Can I ask a question that might be a little bit off topic, but like I say, I don't know a heck of a lot about this, but when it comes to transplants, what's the deciding factor of whether it's a single transplant or a double transplant? Would you be able to answer that? Or?
Generally, it's the disease and the person's general health. If the person has a weak heart and they feel they can't go through the length of surgery to do a double lung transplant, they will only do a single.
Okay.
Some of them, it's strictly the disease. A lot of people with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis can manage very well with only a single lung transplant. With alphas, because of the nature of the disease and the way the lungs become increasingly distended, if they do a single lung transplant, then the remaining native lung will continue to expand and at times will encroach upon the transplanted lung and end up causing it problems. So it all depends on the general health. Toronto will, when they get a set of lungs, if they have two people who have been listed for a single lung transplant, they both match the criteria for a set of lungs that they have, then Toronto will split them and do the two transplants. If a person has been listed for a single transplant, but there is no one else that matches for the other lung, then they will do both.
Okay. Thank you.
So. And that's very good to know, because I'm an alpha, and I've had a right lung transplant, and now I know why my left lung is dead, because you're saying that it's normally that's something that happens, and now they're thinking of doing the left lung.
To lose its elasticity, it can no longer function, and so it encroaches. It still takes up all that space and impinges on the good lung being able to inflate and deflate properly.
So that's something that everybody knew, like the doctors would have known that, or maybe not.
I think it's one of those things that over the years is becoming, it's an increasing knowledge base.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
No, I'm listed for a double lung transplant, not because I'm an alpha, but because of a MAC infection I had.
Alpha 2, okay.
Before, and infectious disease doc said that it will only work. He wants everything out, everything removed that can be removed to be replaced, so there's less place for the infection to stay. It's very hard to get rid of the MAC infections.
Yeah, no, that's not good.
Yeah.
What is a MAC infection?
Microbacterium.
Okay.
It's a cousin to TB. It's similar to TB, but it's not infectious from person to person, but it acts along the same lines as a TB infection. They call it a non-tuberculosis infection.
Okay.
And they're insidious. They are absolutely insidious, and treatment can take 18 months to get rid of them. And sometimes they just go into remission, and then they'll rear their head again later. They have diagnosed 4 or 5 different ones in Ed. And the one that they were very concerned of is very insidious, and they're afraid of it if anything remains of it infecting the new lungs. So immediately when they transplant him, they will put him on a course of really massive antibiotics to kill anything that remains.
Now, is this something that would be more probable for an alpha to get that infection?
Actually,
question.
Sandy Sandhouse down in the States, I was talking to him about it one time, and he commented that the number of people they have coming into Jewish Barnes Hospital with MAC infections, the greater percentage of them were alphas than any other respiratory problem.
Okay.
So I think it has to do, again, with that loss of elasticity in the lungs